Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 91 of the Rise Up and Share Your Medicine podcast. You are in the right place if you have a longing, a prayer, an intention to share your unique soul's medicine, right? That unique contribution that you came here to share with the world, that piece of the puzzle that only you can fulfill. And you want to share that through your career, through your service, through your leadership, through your creative pursuits, then you're in the right place. And today, specifically, we're going to talk about perfectionism and how I like to think of it as a disease, how the disease of perfectionism can really hinder and even block your ability to share your soul's medicine at the level that you're here to share it. Because the truth is, if you're watching this, whether you're here live or on the replay, then I know you're already sharing your medicine. You're already sharing it through your work, through the way you live your life, through your interactions, perhaps through your creative endeavors. And your soul, right? Your soul is always guiding you to that next level, right? Guiding you to that refinement, to that space where you're sharing your medicine with the most integrity, with the most authenticity, in a way that blesses the most people and at the same time blesses you as well, brings you so many blessings. So we're not just talking about just simply sharing your gifts, it's sharing them in the way that you agreed to before you came here on the earth, right? Before you were born. And so my name is Lisa Espinosa. I'm a spiritual career coach and priestess. And I've been doing this work for 15 years now, and I've helped hundreds of my clients and students to do just that. And perfectionism is one of the things that I was thinking about this as I was reflecting. And I think this is true. If not, it's nearly 100% true that every client I've ever worked with, and at this point, it's hundreds, maybe thousands by this point. If it's my clients and students, people who've taken my training, perfectionism shows up at some point or the other. For some of my clients, it's a big part of the healing process of the coaching that I support with them. And for others, it might not be the majority, but at some point, especially when they're getting ready to up level, it comes up. So I want to break it down for you from this perspective, from the spiritual perspective, from the perspective of your soul and your ego structure, because that's what's the most useful. I have my little notes here. So if you see me looking at the paper, it's just because I want to make sure to not get too off on tangent. And so before anything, I want to clarify that from a divine perspective, right, we are already perfect. You are perfect. You are divine. You are one with source. And when we are this divine being having a human experience, we're here experiencing the journey of evolution, the journey of healing ourselves, the journey of releasing burdens, of releasing other people's expectations, of releasing any facade that we've put on so that we can be fully authentic, so that we can awaken. And so that's where perfectionism comes in, right? And if you think of it as an illness, it is an illness of the ego structure. And when I talk about the ego structure, I'm again from the spiritual perspective, as humans, as divine beings who are having a human experience, that human experience involves having an ego structure. And I like to call it that, an ego structure, the ego matrix, right? Ego program, whatever resonates with you. That's the part of us that believes we're separate from God, from source, from our soul, from divinity. And this program, the ego structure, really believes that we need to fix ourselves, we need to protect ourselves, there's something inherently wrong with us. And everything we do, including sharing our soul's medicine, including the work that we do, is a way for us to get validation and prove our worth. That's the ego's understanding of it. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not that something's wrong with you. It's like we all have an ego structure. And part of the awakening process, part of the ascension process, part of the remembering process is to really get to know our ego structure, have compassion for ourselves because it's challenging to have an ego structure, and then make the very courageous decision to not follow the ego structure's guidance, but follow our soul's guidance. So now that you understand what the ego structure is, or, I know some of you have been following my teachings for years and years and years, so you already know that, but it's important to hear it over and over and over again. Then you understand, oh, why would perfectionism be such a disease, a prevalent disease of humanity? Because the ego is always trying to protect you, right? From being judged, from being humiliated, from anything that you could do that would make you feel bad about yourself. That's what the ego structure is designed to do. Whereas your soul is like, you're already perfect. I love you, right? And your soul's like, you're here to share your unique medicine. Keep moving forward. Keep taking steps. It doesn't have to be perfect in the sense of our human self. You just need to keep showing up and keep refining. And so we have this inner battle, right? We have the ego structure that's like, no, it's got it. So let me back up a little bit. I used to be really confused about perfectionism because when I heard that, I was like, oh, I definitely not a perfectionist, because I would think, well, I'm not perfect. Look at my creations. They definitely could be better. So in my mind, I thought someone who's a perfectionist had perfect creations. Of course, I know now, like, nobody has that from a human perspective. But perfectionism comes in many flavors and colors and shades and degrees. So you need to, as you listen to this, start to think about, well, how does perfectionism show up in my life? It might not be very obvious. It might be very subtle. It might be hidden as something that feels very professional and feels very responsible. But it's still the sneaky way that our ego comes in to try to hold you back from continuing to share your medicine. From sharing it, let me be clear, from sharing it to the level that your soul wants you to share it, right? So your ego's okay if you stay in a certain comfort zone. So let's say, you're teaching classes, right? And you're very comfortable in the classes you teach. People come to them, enjoy them, you get positive feedback, but there's still something inside of you that feels a little bit restless, or maybe more than a little bit. Maybe you're like, no, I actually know I want to change it up. I'm feeling dissatisfied. I'm feeling like there's something more I'm supposed to share in these classes, or I'm supposed to refine them, or I'm supposed to, maybe you already know what it is. Maybe you're being guided to, I don't know, share your artwork or teach your class in a different way. I know, for example, a lot of my clients are therapists, and I remember having a lot of conversations with their clients who were therapists who'd been doing therapy for years and years and years, but they were being guided to integrate alternative healing or integrate, I just made up a word, integrate mindfulness practices into their sessions. But they had all this perfectionism coming up, right? Because the ego structure is like, okay, this is safe, stay here. And your soul's like, no. Your soul's like, keep going, keep going. There's more you're meant to share. Your medicine is meant to touch more people. You're meant to be more authentic. And so there's that inner struggle always, always, always. And so what is important to identify, as I was saying before, is where is perfectionism holding you back? Not for you to judge yourself, because remember what I said, we all struggle with this in some way or another. It's just we're programmed that way. And so this is one thing you want to think about in your life. Where are the places where either you keep putting off procrastinating, right? Putting off taking action, right? Maybe in the beginning of the year, you're like, all right, this is the year where I'm going to share more of my artwork, or this is the year where I'm going to start, sharing meditations online, or this is the year where I'm going to start my blog, or, this is the year where, for some of you it might seem like bigger steps where I'm going to leave this career and start a new one, or continue in my career, but slowly start this other one. And then here we are 6 months later, and either you've taken no steps, or you've taken very little steps, or you were on a roll and now it's been a month and you have taken no steps. Again, please, there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's places like that in my life. But that's where like, okay, something has happened there. And your ego structure will want to say, oh, yeah, well, circumstances, right? You sold your house, you moved, you got sick, there's all these external reasons why you had to pause. Now, is that true? Yes, sometimes it is, of course. There are times where external circumstances are such that your soul literally says it's time to pause that a little bit. Wait, you've got to settle this first. And what's interesting is that usually that is soul guidance when you resist it. Isn't it interesting? We often resist our soul's guidance. So when your soul is saying, wait, pause, slow down, often our ego structure is like, no, keep going. I can't stop because I'll fall behind. And then when your soul is saying, go, take action, move forward, your ego saying, no, everything else has to be set before I do this, right? And so that's one way to notice that. The other way that's really interesting to notice about perfectionism is that sometimes it gets very hidden because you're super busy. So this is when I notice it with my clients. Either they're feeling stagnant, like, why can't I keep taking steps on this project I want to complete, or this website I want to set up, or whatever it is. And I just talked about that. Or the other way is they're super busy. Like, I'm so busy, I have so many things to do, I just never get around to taking my action steps, right? So either extreme, we know the ego structure has kind of jumped in, and as one of the trainings I took called it, hijacked us, right? Like, oh. And again, just notice that, just be really curious, like, oh, okay. And one thing that people tend to do when we're in that place, right, when you realize, okay, I need to do something different, is take more training, take more classes, do more research. Those are very safe things to do. Again, I'm not dismissing or suggesting that there's never a time to take more training. Of course there is. I've taken lots of training in my life. And of course, there's a time and a place for research, of course. But again, it's very interesting. Usually, when your soul is guiding you to take a certain type of training, you'll have some fear. You might resist it. I took a priestess leadership training a few years ago, and I had so much resistance to it. I was like, I do not want to take this training. I was like, it's too much money. It's too long. I've already taken like so many trainings. I don't need this. And yet my soul, my ascended master guides, it just kept coming and kept coming and kept coming until I listened. And of course, now on the other end, I'm like, oh my gosh, there were so many reasons why I had to take that training. But I'm talking about using training as a delay tactic, right? Like, oh, I'm not ready yet. I need to learn more. It's so much safer to keep taking training, to keep doing research, to stay in the mode of consuming. Let me learn more, or stay in the role of student. Like, I have parts that love being a student. I love learning. I was a teacher, right? I mean, I'm still a teacher in a way, but I was literally a 7th grade teacher before, teaching teenagers. So I love being a student. So it's very seductive. So notice that if there's anywhere where you're like, okay, I know I need to take more training. I need to get another degree. I need to, take this in this class. Notice if it's delaying, if it's coming from your ego structure or your soul, right? And so where Again, the reason that doesn't work is because if it's coming from your ego structure, it's just delaying. And where you really want to be is in a place where you're making steady, ongoing progress. Not hustle, not I never rest, but it's steady, ongoing progress. And within that, yes, there will be cycles when things might be feeling like they're going really fast. And there might be cycles where it feels like it's going a little slower because your soul recognizes, oh, we need to pause here a little bit, as I said earlier. But there's not months that go by and you're like, whoa, I haven't even worked on this thing I really wanted to work on. Right. So that's where you want to be, because when you're making steady, ongoing progress, that means you're sharing your soul's medicine and it is getting refined, it is getting perfected. And so, what is the process? How do you, the title of this podcast episode is Being Willing to Be Imperfect. And so, there is always that requirement. The first requirement is willingness. Right? Just a little willingness is enough. You don't need to know how. It doesn't need to be perfect. I just said, right? It You can be scared, you can have all your feelings about it. But if you have that willingness, you're like, beautiful soul, I am willing. I am willing to show up even though I'm scared, even though I'm nervous. I don't even know what steps to take. And if you're not willing, that's okay. If you're like, I want to be willing, sometimes that's as good as you can get in some points. Maybe you're like, I don't honestly know if I'm willing yet. But if you're watching this, some part of you wants to be willing. So you could say, I want, help me. Help me get to that place where I'm willing to show up imperfectly. So that's the first step, your willingness, right? Your willingness is like your intention, right? Remember, we all have free will. The divine didn't make us robots, right? It's not like we can decide not to do it. We can decide, no, I'm not going to share my soul's medicine to the level that I could in this lifetime. You won't be punished for it. God will not be disappointed in you. Your soul will not love you less. But what will happen is that, one, your joy will be less, because the what truly brings us joy, like long lasting joy, not just fleeting pleasure, but long lasting joy, is when we're sharing our medicine the way we're meant to share it. Yes, there's other feelings on the way there, but when you're sharing it in that way, it's so fulfilling, it's so purposeful, it's so healing for you. You're so blessed. So if you decide not to do this because you have free will, you're the one that loses out, misses out. And then also the people you're here to serve also miss out, right? Because nobody, as I say over and over and over and over, nobody else has your unique soul's medicine. So if you don't share it, nobody else can share it in that way. They might have the same job, they might do the same thing, but they're a different person with a different soul blueprint. So the medicine that comes through them is different, right? I'm not comparing like yours is better, theirs is worse. No, I'm just saying it's different. So the world doesn't get that medicine. And so, first step is your willingness, right? Just saying, I'm willing to show up imperfectly. And that takes a lot of courage, right? It takes a lot of courage because what happens when you say that? You're saying two things. One is that you're going to show up and some people might judge you. Now, most people judge you quietly. Like, I mean, some people do it verbally, but most people, it's an internal judgment. You might be judged, right? People might say, wait, that's wrong, or that's ugly, or that doesn't make sense, or whatever, right? All those things. The other thing that the ego really fears is, what if people don't say anything good? Right? If you have wounds around needing a lot of validation, that can be really painful. If you put your work out there, put yourself out there, and nobody judges it, but it's also crickets. That's actually what happens the most. It's like, I remember when I first started this, spiritual entrepreneurship career 15 years ago, I had so much fear, especially after my first book came out and I started doing book talks. Back then, it was all in person. And I was terrified. And I was terrified of so many things. But when I was like, oh my gosh, people are going to be like, who is this girl, woman, think she is talking about the soul? How does she know this? How does she know she's right? Or that somebody would ask me some really deep spiritual question about the architecture of the soul. And I would just be like, I have no idea, right? I was so terrified of all the what I imagined people judging me or saying that's wrong. And although I encountered some of that, at first, most of what I encountered was nothing, was people not coming to my classes. It was very little attendance. It was putting my work out there and not hearing anything back and thinking like, oh my gosh, does it even matter that I'm doing this? Does it even make a difference? Right? So that's the other fear that we're like, oh gosh, what if we put ourselves out there and we get ignored or nobody even notices? No one shows up. That's the other fear. Right? So when we're saying that we're willing to be imperfect is we're willing to love ourselves through that, right? That we're like, okay, that we're not saying, all right, God, soul, I'll show up, but you've got to promise me that nobody's going to judge me. And then you got to promise me that all these people are going to tell me how great and awesome I am and how it changed their life. Then I'll show up. That's not how it works. And it doesn't work that way, not because your soul's trying to punish you, but because the process of showing up imperfectly, even though your medicine is perfect, I don't want to say pushes you, but leads you to heal yourself. All those times I've shown up, even though I was scared, even though it wasn't perfect, even though some people did judge me and sometimes no one showed up and I felt all the things. Every time that happened and I kept going, not by repressing my emotions, but working with my therapist or my coach or and by myself with my tools, with my ascended master guides, and looking at the wounds that came up for me, right? Looking at my insecurities, loving myself through it, learning how to have compassion for myself, cleaning all of that up so that every time I could show up for service I could, how do I say this? I could show up more and more and more without attachment in true service. One of my coaches, who I really respect, she gave this definition of service. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so perfect. And she said, service is adding value without attachment. And I was like, oh my gosh, when she said that, I was like, whoosh, it's like a lightning bolt through me. And I was like, how mature and sophisticated and challenging is that to really show up in service without attachment? I mean, I can't, I am not in any way saying I show up like that all the time. It's a constant, it's an ongoing practice. I have to work at that every day. I mean, some days are easier than others for sure, but that's like an ongoing practice. And so that's what this journey of being willing to show up imperfectly is about. Is you're saying, I'm willing to, because the paradox is the ego wants you to be perfect, right? It has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. Nobody can judge you. You can't make a mistake. People have to like applaud everything you do and it has to be amazing. And yeah, they have to tell you how much they loved it, right? Some version of that. But your soul is like, first of all, your soul's like, you're already perfect. Your medicine is so perfect. But it's also, it's like perfect as you go, refine as you go. Keep going. The way you refine your medicine is by taking action, not by just imagining it, right? So keep showing up. I've given this example hundreds and hundreds of times, but it's just the one that comes to mind often is, when I was guided to start doing lives, like I had so much resistance. I was so scared. I was worried people were going to judge me. Literally nobody showed up at first. Nobody was judging me, just nobody was watching. But then there was some kind of things that were said, but the more I kept showing up, it was refining my medicine, right? I was perfecting as I went along. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not suggesting you show up sloppy or unprofessional, right? When I started my Facebook Lives at that time, I think they're all on my YouTube channel, so you can all go back and look at these. I, of course, prepared as best as I could. I practiced. I didn't just turn on the camera and just start blurting things out. I did what I needed to do, but I also knew that my ego wanted to just keep getting it perfect and perfect and perfect. And I remember even considering taking some training on public speaking, and I was like, no, 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 no. This is not what my soul wants me to do. At some point, I literally had to press go live and open my mouth, right, and start talking. And I've said this before, if you watch the trajectory of my lives, you can see the refinement as I kept showing up. And I'm not done. It's not perfect now in this moment, but it's, even with this podcast, I'm on episode 91. Even if you just go to episode 1, it's like that's how you perfect and you refine as you keep taking steps. Now, I'm giving you my examples. They don't have to be yours. You might not be guided to do a live or do a podcast. Yours might be different. Don't dismiss it because yours looks different than mine. It's just the example I'm giving. But even, I have clients who want to, for it makes sense. Many of my clients, part of their journey will involve creating a very, very simple website, not even like just like a landing page. And that's a place where perfectionism comes in super loud, right? And so, like, really coaching them through that process of like, well, what is your soul actually? What is the next little step? Right? So, what is the process? Again, you're going to be willing. Affirm your willingness to show up imperfectly, right? Identify what variation of perfectionism shows up for you. What is it? Is it fear of being judged? Is it fear that you'll make a mistake and you'll make a fool of yourself? Is it fear of rejection? Is it fear that no one will show up? Just ask yourself those questions. Just notice, because that will give you really useful information. Like, oh, like I have some clients that the fear of being judged is like paralyzing. And then I have other clients that it's not like they want to be judged, but for them, the biggest fear is being ignored. It's like, oh my gosh, if I market a class and no one shows up, the embarrassment would be horrible, right? Like there's that. So just notice, because once you notice that, you're like, oh, okay, that's a wound, right? That's a wound. That's a place my soul wants me to heal. Because when I heal that, that won't hold me back anymore. I will be able to show up with so much more integrity and authenticity because I won't be needing people to validate me. I can just be in service. So you're going to notice that. Have compassion for yourself. Like these are the skills that you develop, right? And this is what I help my clients with, right? It's like, how do we develop the skill of having compassion for ourselves? I know we hear that over and over and over and over, but sometimes it's very challenging. Like it could be like you're asking me to figure out calculus. Now I know for some of you calculus might not be hard, but when I took that in college, I was like, what is this? Right? And so learning that skill of having compassion, and then learning that your soul, like I said before, is leading you not to be perfect, but to perfect as you go, to refine as you go. That is the soul-led leadership. So I'm going to do just a little inner journey, and then I'm going to pull. I'm so excited. I have a new deck, Guardian Angels. I'll pull a card at the end. This will be very short. Take a few cleansing breaths. And as you do that, just imagine that. Imagine that you could go through your year, right? We're almost at the halfway point. The halfway point, I think it's July 2nd. The rest of this year, or whenever you're watching this episode, and that you could have compassion when that perfectionism illness comes up, when that virus, let's call it a virus. You're not going to beat yourself up. You're not going to pretend you don't have it, because we all have it. And that you're going to identify, you're like, ooh, I really understand where this virus comes up for me. And you're going to learn how to have compassion for yourself and then move forward. So in this moment, bring your hands to your heart as I'm the palms of your hands. And I have this new crystal I just bought this weekend. It's malachite. So bringing your hands over your heart center or just your awareness there. Welcome your beautiful soul. Feel your heart just filling with light as your soul responds, right? Your soul always responds and your soul's like, yes, I'm here. And then just ask this question, beautiful soul, where is the virus of perfectionism, the illness of perfectionism holding me back? What area of my career, of my creativity, of my leadership, of my service, where is it holding me back? And then ask your soul, beautiful soul, send me your light, your blessing, help me heal that. And feel like this ray of golden light fills your heart. And if there's an ascended master or your guardian angel, as we're going to pull a guardian angel card, that you connect to, call on them, those divine beings that are here to help you, and say, beautiful angels or beautiful Mother Mary or beautiful Kuan Yin, help me heal this illness of perfectionism. And then finally ask, beautiful soul, what is a step? What is a next step you want me to take this week? It might be a super tiny little step, but what is the next right step that perhaps you've been guiding me to take for months? Or perhaps I've been so busy I haven't even noticed. But in this moment, you hear it. You hear that next step. And if you don't hear it yet, trust that your soul gave you the answer. It's in your heart, and it will be revealed at just the right time. Maybe when you're washing dishes or taking a walk or taking a shower, it'll be revealed. And then take some deep cleansing breaths. Feel the love of your soul, the blessing of your soul, the blessing of your guardian angel or ascended master you connected with. And with that, we bring the palms of our hands together and we end this journey with a namaste. Namaste. Thank you so much, Roxana. Hello, Michelle. Hello. I just see your names now. And anybody else who's here, feel free to share. And feel free to share if, what came up for you. I know sometimes when we do this, you might not, like I said, you might not consciously hear the answer right away. That's okay. It will be revealed, right? But maybe you heard the next step, or maybe your soul gave you the guidance of like, oh, this is where perfectionism is holding me back, right? So I said I was going to pull a card, so I'm going to pull a card. This is from this Guardian Angel Oracle deck. I've always, guardian angels have always had such a special place. Now, I love archangels. And please know this is all beyond any sort of religious dogma. I know angels are often associated with Christianity, but this is beyond that, right? All spiritual paths are welcome. But I've always really loved guardian angels. And so I was so excited when I saw this deck. So we're going to ask these beings of light. And if the word guardian angels triggers you because you have some sort of religious trauma, I totally understand. I have had that for sure. I've done a lot of healing with it, but I really understand. And I, replace that word. It's just these divine beings of love that love you unconditionally. And so let's ask what these divine beings, what message do they have for everybody here live, everybody watching the replay, about being willing to be imperfect, being willing to heal that perfectionism virus so that you can show up and perfect as you go, refine as you go. All right, here we go. Wow, it's freedom. Okay, and it says, you deserve to be liberated from the burden of pain, trauma, and limitations. Allow yourself to release what no longer serves you and let your inner light shine freely. I'm going to read that again. You deserve to be liberated from the burden of pain, trauma, and limitations. And I would add, I'm hearing really clearly, you deserve to be liberated from the burden of perfectionism. Allow yourself to release what no longer serves you and let your inner light shine freely. Love this angel. Look at him just sitting there. So beautiful. And if, I want to invite you to sign up for my newsletter. If you're not receiving that, I send lots of resources there. And that's the best way to stay just on top of everything that I'll be sharing in the coming months. And also those free sessions that I offer, that breakthrough consultation. I just opened the July slots. So if you're interested in doing that, you can go to my website, myname.net, lisaespinosa.net. But really, the best way is just sign up for my mailing list. And then every mailing list that I sign up, I send the link for that. All right, everyone, I'm so excited. We're in the 90s, right? Episode 91, episode 100 will be here soon enough. I'm so excited for that. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Go share your beautiful medicine. The world needs it so much. Bye, everyone.